Joining.
Here we go. Awesome. Great to see everybody already. Oh, look at there. Oh my gosh. Roseanne, we haven't seen you for a while. I know you've been very, very busy. Gonna go ahead and let a few more people in this morning. Great to see everybody. See, I love that doorbell. And we're gonna, Roseanne, I'm sure you have great drone stories to share. That's phenomenal what you are doing.
Uh, Good morning. I miss it. I know I've been busy and the semester's going really well and kind of added basic and cinema, and the drone soccer has been really fun on the field. And I got to fly at the Riverside Fair day to night. That was really fun.
Wonderful.
We're so lucky. I just feel we're blessed, and I'm excited for today. This is gonna be great. Today
Yes,
is gonna
it
be
is.
awesome.
Yes, it
Oh,
is.
Desi, I wanted to point out that I don't know if she's a regular, but one of my former students, Crystal, is here. She connected over on LinkedIn and said she might be able to make it at least for part of the presentation. Hi, Crystal.
Yeah.
Good to see you again.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I have conferences all day long with my children, but I wanted to pop on at least for a little bit.
Oh
Well,
my
I'm
God.
glad to see you again.
Welcome. Yes,
Thank
that's
you.
fabulous. And look, we've got Joe Soretta here. This is awesome. Hi, Joe. How are you?
Great, Desi. How are you? Good to see you.
Fantastic. Oh my gosh, it's so good to see everybody.
Good to see all of you. I see Katie's on, Sharon's on. Great.
Yes. And we're going to give it a second and let a few more people jump in here. There's Sharon. Hi, Sharon. Crystal, I can't wait to hear more from you. I know we're going to probably see you popping in and out for meetings, but great to have you here. Linda, we haven't seen you for a while also, so I know you're rocking the drone industry right now, doing all kinds of great stuff. So, okay, so I know you're not, hey, hi, Bill. I see Bill. This is great. And look, even Sheila's jumping in here. I was going to segue right over to my announcements. So give me a sec, let a few more people in. And then I got a couple of announcements that I want to do. I don't know if you saw anywhere in social media, but Women in Drones, we were in Ireland. Yes. And so I agree, right? So we were there doing a book signing. And there's another book signing coming up, which is super exciting that I have to share with you. And so I'm going to put a link in here. Do you have a book? If you have a book, we have another book signing opportunity coming up. This is going to be during Exponential. It's on April 24th. So Women in Drones has set up a page. And if you would like to participate in this, let me put the link in there for you as well. So isn't that exciting? And you know, it's just amazing. There's so many amazing women in this industry that have published documents and books and such. And so it's really exciting that we have this opportunity to share. So let me go ahead and pop that into our chat while we're waiting. There you go. So got that in there. Gonna let one more person in. No, it looks like Sheila, I'm going to make you co-host to help us out here. Thank you again, Sheila. She's always very helpful for us. And then I am going to really quick say thank you to the sponsor on the go video. If you have drone industry related questions, there's an opportunity to book a free discovery call. And I'm going to put a link in there for that. And again, we have more people jumping in here. So I try to give it a minute just so that people have an opportunity to jump in. So I think we're good to go because I know everybody is here because of our amazing spotlight speaker today. I know you're going to be excited to share and hear from Patrick. So today we have Patrick with us, and he's with Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, and he's going to be sharing with us about the partnership and what's happening at Embry-Riddle and a bunch of really exciting stuff. But I'm going to let him kick it off with his amazing journey of how he even got here, where he's at, and all the amazing things that he's done in the industry. So Patrick, I am going to jump over to you. I'm going to make you spotlight for everyone. And thank you for joining us. I'm super excited.
It's absolutely my pleasure. And in front of this guest gathering, plus my Embry-Riddle colleagues in the form of Joe Soretta, there's no pressure whatsoever. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, which will start my presentation, presumably.
All right.
All right. Can you see that?
It is perfect. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Love it when it works on the first try. All right. So the best way I could come up with for our topic today is going to be women and drones and Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Now, one thing I always encourage my students, as I said earlier, we have one of them with us today in the form of Crystal. Hi again, Crystal. Is that if you're going to sit down and listen to somebody talk, he said, trusting that his presentation was going to work, you should figure out whether or not you should actually listen to them. So my first slide is entitled Why You Should Maybe Listen to This Guy. And I'll be the first to admit I've got a pretty amazing title, Professor Patrick Sherman, which sounds cool and all. However, just so the other academics don't beat me up and take my lunch money after class here, I do need to make one thing clear, which is that my full title is Assistant Professor of the Practice. And what that means is I don't possess a doctorate. I don't have a PhD or another form of a doctorate. And I was brought on to Embry-Riddle on the basis of my sort of real world know-how, not my academic bona fides. So that tells you a little bit about my background. And then sort of what I want to additionally bring to you through these first couple of slides is an understanding of the fact that at least in the academic world, and maybe in other worlds, probably in other worlds too, I'm something of an outsider. And I think that sort of outsider perspective may benefit your understanding of the other things I have to say. And I noted at the very bottom of this slide that I'm an outsider who took a path that is never taken because it's a terrible, terrible path. So anyway, let's take a look. So when I was trying to figure out sort of how to tell the whole story of my life up until the moment I became interested in drones, sort of the thing I best decided on was sort of this word cloud here. And what you'll notice is that drones don't feature at all in it, and aviation figures only in the very smallest way. I was blessed to have a tremendous education, earning a bachelor's degree, dual major bachelor's degree in English and sociology from the University of Southern California. And it turns out that specific combination, English and sociology, is basically a guarantee of lifetime unemployment. So after I tried existing in the real world for a year, I decided it wasn't for me. I went back and got my Master's of Business Administration from Willamette University here in my home state of Oregon. And I sort of emerged out of that, frankly, not having changed my focus a whole lot from when I worked the high school newspaper. I became a writer, a photographer, a graphic designer. My one brief nod to my love of aviation was becoming a private pilot while in college. I got about 80 hours in my logbook, which does not make me a tremendous aviator by any stretch of the imagination. One interesting sort of sidebar to that was that I, along the way, became a scuba diving instructor. And it turns out that teaching people in an environment where they can't see anything, they can't hear anything, and if they make a mistake, they die, is a very effective way of sort of sharpening your teaching abilities in particular. So I've always been grateful for that. And if you look right in the middle of this slide, you notice shrunk down there, smaller than anything else, is a passion for aviation, which I always did have, but which I never saw as sort of playing any significant role in my life, shrunk down to the point of almost disappearing there. However, a strange thing happened on the way to me becoming a pensioner of the state. In 2010 or thereabouts, homemade drones became a thing. The technology reached the point where it was possible for, anyone, a couple hundred to a couple $1,000 could build their own small UAS. We didn't call them that at the time, of course. And I was just immediately hooked by it. You'll notice that both of the images here You see small primitive UAS operating around a fire. As a journalist, I had a lot of good connections with the first responder community, and so it was natural for me to invoke those. And furthermore, when I learned what this technology could do, I immediately saw the applications for firefighters and other first responders. And just more broadly, again, being a journalist, being somebody who loves to tell stories, I felt an urgent need to share what we were doing. A lot of other people were trying to do the same thing we were doing, build their own drones, basically. And so to sort of agglomerate all this, we inaugurated the Roswell Flight Test Crew, and you see our crest in the lower left-hand corner there. And that came from the fact that our initial aircraft were extremely primitive. And we tended to light them up with lights so we could determine their orientation, which was the front, which was the back, etc. And in particular, I was a brand new pilot. I'd never flown before, so I tended to crash constantly, given the primitive state of aircraft controllers at that time. So, and then furthermore, because of these sort of disc-shaped strangely lit aircraft bouncing around in the sky, it was inevitable whenever we'd go flying in public, somebody would shout, "Oh, look, it's a UFO." So thus we became the Roswell Flight Test Crew, people who fly UFOs that always crash. Now, and so we started this YouTube channel and a blog. If you younger people can look up what a blog is on the internet. But an interesting thing happened. Well, and I consider this to be my first, frankly, big break, maybe even minor miracle, is that in this brand new nascent world of civilian small UAS, there were essentially two groups of people. This is a Venn diagram here. On the left, we see the red circle, which is people who understood this new technology. And on the right, we see the blue circle, and that's people who could write. And as it turns out, those Venn diagram, those two circles crossed with just enough space for literally one human being in between them. And that human being was me. Because I mean, tons of people understood the technology better than I did at the time, still do, I'm sure. And lots of other people contributed valuable writing to the subject. And here I should clarify, I'm not speaking of writing in the academic context, but writing in the popular context for magazines you might buy on your at your local newsstand at the supermarket or something. And so, or probably you could go through once in 100 different lifetimes of freelance writers, but editors of magazines were calling me and saying, "Hey, how'd you like to write for us?" So at one point I was writing for up to 6 different magazines. And this is basically all in print. I've published about 200 articles by now. I had the great fortune to shoot a total of, and you see a few samples here, but a total of 4 photographs that ended up on the covers of national magazines. And again, a dream come true here, which I had no right to have this dream come true, was that I was once walked into my supermarket to the local newsstand and saw one of my photographs sitting there staring back at me, which was, kind of a dream come true. When I was a young kid learning to take pictures, I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be cool to have the cover of a magazine someday? And so I had that happen. So that was really cool. But in any event, what I want to make sure you don't take away from this is the idea that this is some long, perfect, ascending arc of history where one madcap adventure immediately and automatically leads to the next success. Because from the subjective experience, it was anything but. When I sort of tell this as a 5-minute story, it's like, hey, that's great. One thing leads to the next. But it would be hard to overstate how challenging this was and how long it took. From this happening up until today, it was about 15 years. In that time, I worked for at least 2 different companies who still owe me enough money that I could buy a rather nice car, because I would do teaching for them or whatever, or they'd go out of business or literally flee the country and stuff like that. Of the 6 magazines I wrote for in total, 4 of them are completely gone, and the only 2 that survived were covering and continue to cover model aviation to this day. So they sort of took on drones as a sidelight. And all my fellow influencers, that sort of first crop of drone influencers, heaven help me, they're all gone. none of them made it. They just sort of ran out of steam. And frankly, I stuck with it probably longer than I should have, probably longer than was reasonable, even rational. The smart people got out before I did, let's put it that way. But I was so devoted or potentially deluded that I just kind of stuck with it. So, and as it turns out, that was a good thing because a few years later in 2019, I got my second big break, which was that I somehow, and how still defies easy understanding. Maybe someday you'll have my boss, Dr. David 30acre, on the program and he can tell you why. But for some reason, they hired me at Embry-Riddle to come teach people about drones. And I've said this countless times before. You could run my life as a simulation a million times, and you would not get this outcome. It's that incredibly unlikely. So, in any event, but here I am. And then you were mentioning book signings. Unfortunately, as we said before the program began, I will not be at Exponential because I'll be in Daytona Beach at a presentation. But I myself have a book coming out, possibly as soon as next month, being called "Getting Started with Drones and Model Airplanes," being published by Aviation Supplies and Academics out of Newcastle, Washington. So again, for a writer, the thrill of a lifetime. So that's all very cool. So the first thing, and maybe I'll finally get around to delivering some value to your audience at this point, is that what have I learned from the past 15 years? Well, when I was a kid, something you would occasionally hear people say is that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. And as a kid, I never understood that. Frankly, for most of my adult life, I don't think I ever understood that. But I think that this confluence of events, which have brought me to where I am at this very moment, have made me truly understand, without even knowing it, certainly without it being intentional. I was preparing myself to fill this specific role. Everything I ever learned about journalism, everything I ever learned about writing, everything I ever learned about teaching has brought me to this moment. And so, as it happens, when these opportunities came along to be a writer in the industry, to teach at Embry-Riddle, everything I had done in all the decades leading up to that had somehow strangely locked together to form this perfect moment. So was I lucky? Yes, I absolutely think so. But is luck what happens when preparation meets opportunity? I think that's probably also true. So what would I then pass along to other folks who are on their own, somewhere in this journey on their own? And I sort of boiled it down to 4 bullet points, which you see here. And the first one is that you must be possessed of a burning passion. And when I was putting together this PowerPoint presentation, I originally wrote that sentence, you must possess a burning passion. But what I realized is I had changed the writing to you must be possessed of a burning passion because nothing else will do. It must be a passion that almost consumes you. Again, all of my contemporaries, every single one of them dropped out. And again, I only stuck around because I was too stupid to do anything else. But the point is, if you're going to truly achieve your dreams, it has to be more than something you want to do. It has to be something you need to do. So for whatever it's worth, that's it. I mean, you can't make yourself feel passionate about something. I guess the key thing is if you find you're not passionate about this, that's okay. No demerits, but go find something you do care that deeply about and do that instead. But if this is what you feel about, it may take you 15 years, but you will get there. At least that's what I believe, and that's what my experience is. And then secondly, network, and then in your free time, network, which is why I'm so glad to see the great turnout at events like this one. Because when I was again young, coming of age, and therefore exceedingly stupid, I hated the idea of networking. I mean, just why would you do that? This seems so pointless. But essentially, every accomplishment in my whole life worth anything has come about because of the connections I have made with people. And, as again, another cliche from my childhood said, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And in my experience, it's hard to overstate how true that is. And I think that becomes only more true every day because it's incredibly easy these days to accumulate knowledge. but it's all online. Just look it up. But what is hard to do is to accumulate the shared history with people and the trust that comes with that. So again, I myself, as a younger person, would not have taken this advice, but network, network, network. And then the third thing I would say is do the hard work. There aren't any shortcuts to achieving your dreams. Even if you're not getting paid for it, even if you're not getting recognized for it, even if you're toiling away in total obscurity, keep doing the hard work. That's that preparation. If you're a newspaperman like I was, make every article you write the best article you could possibly write on that subject. If it's some obscure blog entry on your post, that nobody else ever going to read, make it the best blog entry it could possibly be. Do everything to the maximum, even if it seems pointless, because if you're just sort of hanging around, there's no point in being here anyway. And then finally, of course, and this will hardly be a shocking message from a professor, learn everything that you can about presumably the subject you love. I think that's probably good advice in life generally, to learn everything that you can. But if you mean to be in this field or some other field or whatever it may be, keep learning no matter what. None of us knows everything. I mean, this industry is so new and changing so fast. None of us barely knows anything. So you can never learn enough. So keep after that relentlessly. And in that spirit of learning, of never stopping learning, I'd like to introduce all of you to Raquel Oliva. I met her at this past December down in Daytona Beach, Florida. She was an attendee at our residency for our UAS operations program. And I think she has a story in her life which will likely, or at least I imagine, might sound familiar to many of the Women and Drones members. And specifically, what her story begins as a small child, as I suspect the story of most pilots begins as a small child, when she would fly to Ecuador to visit her mother. And so she, very young child, flying on airplanes, of course, who doesn't love airplanes? Certainly she did. And but what she noticed was there were no female pilots. They simply didn't exist. So she thought, I will become a stewardess. And this is how I will involve myself in aviation. And so this was her goal. And then as she got older, she realized, in fact, hey, wait a minute, women can be pilots. So she thought, this is what I'm going to do. So she had an incredibly lucky break. She worked for it. She found a high school, a magnet high school, which was focused on aviation. And through that, she was able to lay the groundwork to get her airframe and power plant certification. And by the way, there's an article in the upcoming issue of Elevated Space magazine, which I wrote, which tells you more about Raquel's story. So in any event, you can find out more there. But in any event, so she goes to that. She joins the Delta Connection Academy to become a pilot. However, then she has her child, who unfortunately is born with special needs. And so the idea of being away from home for days at a time simply becomes impractical for her. But she still loves aviation. She still truly burns with that passion I was just describing. So she wraps up her airframe and power plant, because doing that, she can at least be home every night. And she goes to work doing that. And she has worked for essentially every major company you can think of in the aviation space, commercial aviation, Embraer, Airbus, Rockwell Collins, and which I understand we're not supposed to publicly use their name right now. Literally, I was not allowed to say the name of that company in the article because they're so adverse to even good publicity, I guess. Anyway, the point is she made her mark as an airframe and power plant mechanic, but still, she wanted to fly, as would have I wanted to in her case. However, in the interceding nearly 2 decades, the world had changed around her. And it turned out that she could fly without leaving the ground through the use of drones. And so she turns her attention now to earning her master's degree in uncrewed autonomous systems at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, where, of course, I happen to teach. What a coincidence. So in any event, what I point this out as sort of a path to show that, somebody maybe like, many of the women in drones, this might be an option for them to explore and to sort of understand why she selected Embry-Riddle. And well, the first and most important thing to say about Embry-Riddle, and this is an audience well acquainted with aviation, is that Embry-Riddle is universally regarded as the Harvard of aviation. It is simply the highest standard to which you can aspire in aviation education. I mean, there's nothing beyond it. That's as high as you go. It's Embry-Riddle, and then it's everybody else, which again is really, really cool if they happen to hire you. So in any event, the point is, she wanted to earn her wings. She wants to fly UAS, and here indeed we see her doing it. So she went to Embry-Riddle to further her education. So let's talk a little bit about Embry-Riddle and how it earned that august place, sort of in the firmament of aviation education. So, as it happens, Embry-Riddle was established both as a flight school and an airmail carrier all the way back in 1926. And if you're not a student of the history of aviation, it's easy to miss the sort of absolutely critical role that airmail played in the development of the aviation system as we continue to enjoy it today. It was honestly, in the early days, it was all about moving the mail. The first, human beings, self-loading cargo, as they called it back in the day, to fly on airplanes as a means of transportation, not as pilots or other people directly associated with the operation of the aircraft, were passengers who sort of piled in between the mail bags. I mean, air mail was where it all was, and the idea of passengers traveling in airplanes and sort of this sort of quirky one-off, and somebody sacked out, on the packages in the back, didn't really exist. So as Embry-Riddle established itself as an airmail operator, this was the airlines of their era. And what eventually happened was the operational portion of the Embry-Riddle company merged with several other companies and ultimately became what we still know today as American Airlines, in concert with other partners. So the two people who founded it, T. Higbee Embry, if you can believe that name, and John Paul Riddle. Embry was a businessman. Riddle was a pilot and an educator. Embry retired fairly early in this process, but Riddle continued on with the name, and involved in all facets of aviation. But he was always it was always impressed upon him the importance of education in aviation. So after the operational component of Embry-Riddle joins up with what will become American Airlines decades in the future, he comes back to Florida and starts, among other businesses, a new flying school in Miami. And so there you see an early photograph of it. Again, this is in the dim past. Bear in mind, this is the 1930s. And as it happens, his timing was exceedingly good because, of course, in the late 1930s, the world was on the cusp of war. And there's a sort of foresight, which frankly, I don't think we see nearly enough of in our modern era. President Roosevelt and the rest of the government recognized that, even though our official stance at the time was neutrality, even though the war was raging in China and would soon be raging in Europe, the United States had said we were going to play no role in this war and we were neutral to all powers. However, behind the scenes, they clearly understood that we were going to be participants in this war, and that furthermore, that aircraft were going to be crucial in this new form of warfare. So we embarked on a massive civilian training program. We trained civilian pilots with the understanding that they would be able to step out and work as military pilots when the call came. And of course, the call did come. And so Embry-Riddle was one of the handful of institutions that took up this challenge and trained thousands and thousands and thousands of pilots, and contributed therefore mightily to the success of the war effort. Now, in 1951, Isabel McKay becomes president of the Embry-Riddle, which was, still essentially just sort of a flying school at this point. And I think her key contribution to the history is that she incorporates it as a nonprofit organization. In fact, at that point, it becomes Embry-Riddle Aeronautical Institute. And the reason she did this is actually very pragmatic, is that it was, as a for-profit company, you can't accept charitable donations. I mean, it just, the Lego pieces just don't fit. And so she realized by becoming a nonprofit, they would be able to, accept charitable donations, which they could and then turn around and use to establish scholarships to help people learn to fly. And of course, this was the very maneuver which eventually led to the establishment of what we know today as Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. So another decade and a half passes, and we get to Operation Bootstrap. And oh, how I would love to have been here for this. It was 4 years before I was born, so I probably wouldn't have made very much of it. But in one weekend, this must have been so epic. In one weekend, they moved Embry-Riddle from its longtime base in Miami up to Daytona Beach. And that, of course, is where we continue to have our headquarters today. So a major move. And again, the fact they did it all in one weekend, pretty cool. Now, Embry-Riddle continues to develop over the years. In the 1970s, we opened our second residential campus, being in Prescott, Arizona. And then also in that decade, a sort of a satellite branch at what is now Fort Novosel, which was at the time Fort Rucker, Alabama. And the idea there was to give, service people, the people who are in the armed forces, the opportunity to earn their degrees while they continued their military service. And as a matter of fact, a very good friend of mine, decades ago, earned his master's degree from Embry-Riddle while working as a missileer in Minot, North Dakota. So I have a personal connection to this, which long predates my association with the university. So it's worked well, and this became collectively known as Embry-Riddle's worldwide campus. And then sort of in partnership with this and to supplement it, in 1993, we established an online training presence, which continues to this very day as the Embry-Riddle Worldwide Campus. Now, I think this point is especially crucial to make is because, of course, back about 4 years ago now, suddenly online education became the craze. Everybody wanted to do online education because, of course, nobody could leave their houses. But Embry-Riddle literally has a 3-decade head start on this. So I'd like to think, and I truly believe, we do it as well or better than anyone else because we've been doing it for so long. This is not something that popped up at the last minute. Oh, hey, COVID, let's make an online version of this class. No, we've been doing this for decades. So I think that's worth understanding is when you're looking at an Embry-Riddle online program, you're taking part in a history that already has been going on for decades. All right, so now what I'd like to turn my attention to is sort of the questions of what could you take from Embry-Riddle as well as a drone pilot, regardless of your gender, of course, but we're speaking to women in drones, so we'll sort of make that the focus of our thing. And so this is just sort of aligned to orienting you to sort of what the most fundamental decisions are, and understanding what your options are and how they compare and contrast with one another. So basically, if you wish to seek education from Embry-Riddle, you have a couple of choices. First of all, you could choose to pursue what is called professional education, or which the cool kids shorten down to pro ed, or you could seek an academic degree, which is, a bachelor's of science, a master's of science, the sort of degree you'd get from any university. And so we're first going to touch on professional education because that's where this very interesting partnership has gotten stood up between Women in Drones and Embry-Riddle. So what to know about professional education? First of all, and this likely won't be relevant for anyone on the call, but who knows, is that it's highly customizable. Now, as an individual student, this doesn't apply to you. But the point is, let's say you run some airline company and you want all of your, airframe and power plant folks to, understand something new. You can call up Embry-Riddle's Professional Education. They'll put together a training program. They'll find top flight instructors. They'll come down and teach that for you in person, online, whatever you may want to be. And indeed, a great example of this just over the past few years is our aviation English program. The nation of Brazil, or more specifically, their Civil Aviation Authority, decided that their air traffic controllers really needed, sort of a stronger background in aviation English because, of course, English is the international language of aviation. You should be able to call up any control tower anywhere in the world and speak English to them, and they should be able to communicate with you. Anyway, Brazil decided they weren't quite up to scratch, so they asked Embry-Riddle to put together this program. So they're taking native Portuguese speakers and teaching them to speak English, at least in the context of aviation. Now imagine doing this online. The instructors are here in the United States. Their students are 8,000 miles away in Brazil. I don't envy those people, and it's a miracle, but it's just been a runaway success. They're planning to continue the program and even extend it to their military air traffic controllers. So, like I said, it is a highly customizable option at scale, should any of you ever need that. Now, the next thing to be aware of is that we're obviously here talking about drones, small UAS, but there is a vast selection of professional education courses available. And this is just a graphic I lifted from Embry-Riddle's website. So you can see for yourself: accident investigation, airport management, business and finance, cybersecurity. So you can take courses in any of these things, as well, of course, as UAS, my personal favorite. And the other thing to know is that these are short courses. Most of them you can wrap up in just 4 weeks. A few go as long as 6. Most of them is 4 weeks and you're done. They're offered frequently, most of them a couple of times a year, so you can take them at your convenience. And furthermore, they're reasonably affordable. I know that, there's sort of a you draw a deep breath whenever you talk about, attending college and paying money for that. But these are surprisingly affordable, somewhere typically in the neighborhood of like $400 a class. And then you can take them a la carte. So, for example, I want to know about UAS photogrammetry. You can sign up for a class in UAS photogrammetry, take it, be done with it, you're done. Or if you want, you can string together several of these courses and earn a certificate from Embry-Riddle, and we'll go over what some of those specific options are here on a future slide. So there are approximately 30 pro-ed courses available just focused on UAS. I actually went through and counted them myself. That total might be a little bit questionable because there's some duplication between various classes. But the main thing was I wanted to give you sort of a sense for what these included. For example, SUAS 1000, Understanding Drones, Introduction to UAS, Risk Management, using UAS in inspections of infrastructure, UAS ground school, basic and advanced multi-rotor flight training, fixed wing training, fundamentals for public safety, et cetera, et cetera. And then we also offer a comprehensive online program to get you your trusted operator program, level 1, 2, and 3, and up through remote pilot instructor courses. So there's a lot here which you could choose to undertake. And then furthermore, essentially all of these classes have been developed by the instructors, my colleagues at the Department of Flight. I, for example, developed SUAS 1000. That's my course. And of course, being long-winded, that one goes on for 6 weeks. So I apologize in advance for that. But anyway, so the point is, these are developed by the people who know this stuff better than anyone else. And then, as I mentioned, you can string these together and earn a certificate for your work. And right now we offer 3 certificates through the UAS Pro-Ed program. The first one is UAS for public safety. So you're a firefighter, you're a law enforcement officer, emergency management. You can take 2 of these courses plus an elective, get a certificate. If you're going to go the whole way up through level 3 in trusted operator, there are 3 courses you can take, earning a certificate from Embry-Riddle along with your top level 3 certification. And then finally, there's professional multi-rotor UAS certificate, which has 4 courses, all mandatory, which is going to take you from essentially knowing nothing to, a fully qualified pilot. And again, holding a certificate from Embry-Riddle. And the best part of this is that because of this partnership between Embry-Riddle and Women in Drones, every time you take a pro-ed course through Women in Drones, you're contributing to that organization. You're helping support it. And so what I would like to say about this, and sort of let's boil this down. So for in less than a year, for probably just a little over $1,000, you're going to get a certificate, from the Harvard of your chosen industry. And while doing so, you're going to support this very worthwhile organization that's, helping bring new entrants into this field. I mean, that's one heck of a deal. I don't know why, you wouldn't jump at that opportunity. And then on top of that, I sort of asked around, of course. I don't personally have a whole lot to do with the pro ed on a day-to-day basis, but I asked the folks who do it, and they said, for example, one recent student who they met at a trade show had gotten in touch with them, met them at the trade show, and said she'd taken the courses and had and just said it was a real differentiator in getting her job, because she went in for a job looking at the UAS company, held up her certificate from Embry-Riddle, and she said that made a big difference for her. So I don't know. It's, to my mind, as I said, it's clearly worth looking at. And then the second thing you can do is, of course, pursue more formal education in any subject related to aviation, certainly at Embry-Riddle. But again, of course, my personal expertise lies in our academic degrees: a Bachelor of Science in Uncrewed and Autonomous Systems and a Master's of Science in Uncrewed and Autonomous Systems. Or, why choose? Why not just do both? And the advantage there is if you sign up for what's called the 4+1 program, typically it's 4 years to get a bachelor's degree, another 2 to get a master's degree. But if you say from the outset, I'm going to do 4+1, you can get through the whole thing in 5 years, thereby saving yourself a year. There's some overlap between the undergraduate and graduate classes. So if you're going to do it, why not take a look at it? And so now let's take a brief look at these programs specifically. So for the Bachelor of Science in Uncrewed Systems, again, this is totally classic. You go to college. It's 120 credit hours. It's going to take you notionally 4 years to get through. There is a residency requirement for this degree, because you got to come down and this, I get, is the truly horrifying part. Hang out with me and other folks from Embry-Riddle, and we're actually going to go flying together. So that's a lot of fun. And then the placement rate coming out of this program is 83%. However, that was from almost 2 years ago. And everything I'm hearing, and this is, strictly anecdotal, but actually from other training programs I follow around the country, is that they can't graduate people fast enough. People are getting associate's degrees in this stuff from well-established community colleges, and they're gone. The instant they're graduated, they've got a job. And the initial salary for these jobs is, there you have it, about $81,000 a year on average. Good deal. Now let's take a look at the master's degree in Uncrewed and Autonomous Systems. Only 30 credit hours, meant to be wrapped up in 2 years. Again, unfortunately, you have to hang out with me. However, on the plus side, the placement rate is 100%. You're basically going to get a job coming out of this. And your initial starting salary is at $94,000 a year. And this Embry-Riddle, among other things, is a ferociously efficient educational system. I think our long-term placement across the whole university is like 96% of people find work or pursue a more advanced degree within 6 months of graduation. I mean, that's unheard of. And we, for all our online offerings, consistently rate, in the top 3 of U.S. News and World Reports and other ratings agencies. As a matter of fact, we if you run into somebody from our office who manages these rating things, feel free to ask them about this next bit. It's not a sore point for them at all. We actually dropped to 13th this year because U.S. News and World Report started factoring in student debt, as a question. Where we got caught flat-footed and where we got marked down was because not because our students are drowning in debt when they graduate, but because so few of them had any debt at all. The U.S. News and World Report only looked at the students who had debt, and so they simply excluded from the factor everyone who didn't have debt, even though that was most of the students. So because of that change in the metric, we dropped to 13. So like I said, that's not a sore spot at all for the people who track that sort of thing. So And I thought I would essentially bring this to a close by just sharing some photographs with you from past residencies where the students, again, get to work, hand in glove with the students. In fact, in the center photo there, you see Joe Soretta. I guess everybody's wearing a blue hat in this photograph, but that's Joe Soretta there working with a student. On the left is Dr. David Thirtyacre, our department chair. On the right, at least on my screen, she's obscured behind the column of people, but that's Dr. Kimberly Luthi, who comes out and helps us teach the residencies. And then finally, the lower center photo, the woman you see in the foreground, this was just fascinating to me. She's a high school teacher, and she, with the support of her administration, went out to get a master's degree, God bless her, in in uncrewed aircraft, with the intention of bringing that back to her students. And I just thought that was amazing. And so in this photograph, you see it's the evening after one of our long days out flying at the residency, and they're all feverishly doing their homework, analyzing the data which they collected during the day of flying. So in any event, that is more or less everything I have to say at this juncture on the subject
Awesome.
of.
So we do actually have a lot of comments and questions into our chat. Everybody is inspired and excited about it. And I know we actually only have a few more minutes left, and a few people would love to hear from, and I don't mean to call her out, but Crystal, we would love to hear from you. So one of the things that
Please.
he actually said in the comments, so a lot of people have asked questions, and there's been some Q&A going on, but she had said in there that career services through Embry-Riddle are top notch, and so that was great input right there. And so, Crystal, do you mind a quick share, because I know
Yeah,
someone
that's fine.
And let me,
about-
for everybody who just joined us, Crystal is a recent student of mine, so I was thrilled that she was able to join us today. And I was hoping she'd be willing to say something. So yeah, forget everything I just said. Crystal should have given the talk. Crystal, what's it like being a student at Embry-Riddle?
I've taken classes through other online colleges and universities, and I definitely, there's a big difference, I think, through Embry-Riddle. And your class specifically, honestly, like I've never reached out and connected with a professor after taking a course, besides we've connected on LinkedIn. And I think you've been really helpful specifically. But after I earned my associates in aeronautics, that was back in last November. And then I received my certificate in SUAS safety and operations. And that's when I was taking UNSY 235 with you.
Yep.
That was my last course for that.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
immediately after I finished my associate's degree, career services reached out to me if you need help with anything. And I had mentioned, I could use some help fine tuning my resume a little bit. And 2 days later, I was sent back a Word file full of advice. And I've had a phone call with, I can't remember her name. You probably know. I don't know. But yeah, she's been very helpful. There's like no lag time between emails, even though I'm sure she has tons of students, coming with questions. But yeah, that's been great. And I actually work for a cargo airline,
Okay.
and that's where I've been basically my whole career. So that started in like 2011. And I was hoping to integrate drones for aircraft inspections. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
And how is that path going? Is it looking positive, or still trying to
I mean, there's been some talk back and forth. I was supposed to go out to some sort of training place, I think in Georgia, but that hasn't happened yet. We're kind of focused right now on integrating some new 777s into our fleet right now. So that's kind of the main focus. So it is something that's kind of still on the back burner, and something I'm still very interested in doing though.
Well, that just means the cutting edge, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. So I'm going to have to play catch up here, because there is quite a bit going on in our chat. And I know a lot of the questions have been answered. Thank you Actually, Crystal answered a few, Joe has answered a few. If someone was to take the online courses, is there any way to have that practice and get that practical part of flying if it's an online course? How are you implementing that?
Oh, sure. Well, there are a couple of ways we implement that. First of all, the course after the one Crystal took, Crystal was getting her associates, so she didn't get to do this, is UNSI 435, which is on the undergraduate side, and it has a graduate level equivalent UNSI 520. And so to take that class, you have to have your Part 107 and you have to own an aircraft. And so as a part of that, part of it is that you go out and fly. You're taking an online course, but instead of turning in an essay or writing a discussion post, you go out and fly your aircraft and you submit the video you captured, using your aircraft as your work product for that. And then again, UNSI 435, 520 is where we have the residency. So we all get together, typically in Daytona Beach, Florida, just because that tends to, be the central location. The preponderance of students is located on or at least closer to the East Coast. If they were ever all on the West Coast, we might well go to the Pendleton UAS test range and hold the residency there. But the point is that we get together, we fly, and then we also use a simulator called Erupt, which is the Embry-Riddle Uncrewed Pilot Trainer, if I'm remembering the acronyms all right. Point is, look up Embry-Riddle Erupt. It's available for free to all of you right now. And you can download it. And it's not the world's greatest, high fidelity flight simulator. But the crucial thing is it gives you the opportunity to start learning these sort of thumbs on sticks flying skills you're going to need, and to practice the specific maneuvers you'll need to accomplish while you're with us for the residency. There's a series of flight maneuvers you go through, which were developed by the National Institutes of Standards and Technology, and you have to complete them to a certain standard within a specific time to sort of essentially say, yes, this person can actually handle the aircraft. And so we developed this flight simulator in-house, giving it away for free, specifically to so people can learn this in this way. And then as you continue to take additional classes beyond 435, 520, there is additional flying. So that's essentially how we accomplish that.
Building that muscle memory is so key, and sounds like a great path.
There's no substitute. You have to do it.
Yeah, awesome. There's so many questions into our chat here. I don't know if I missed it or not. I know you gave that whole list of the courses that are available. What are you doing on lines of LiDAR training or anything like that?
I might actually, because he's also with us today, I might actually defer to Joe Soretta. Joe is.
Oh, we're gonna put you on the spot.
Joe, he knew what he was signing up for when he logged on this morning. But Joe is probably one of the world's leading authorities on geospatial data and small UAS operations. And so if we're doing anything with LiDAR, believe me, he'd be the person who would know.
So I was typing and not listening to you, Desi. I apologize. I was answering somebody's question, and I passed the link for the Erupt simulator. So if anybody wants to check it out, try it out. You could use it in your classroom for anybody who's teaching.
Absolutely. But Joe, the question LiDAR was, what are do we offer courses in terms of LiDAR? Now, I know we have an excellent course because you developed it on photogrammetry, but I didn't think we did anything on LiDAR. But I mean, why listen to me when we can listen to you?
No, we don't. That's the short answer is,
well, that was easy.
The university is looking to expand with investments, and a LiDAR sensor is pretty pricey sensor. We have systems that are capable of carrying a LiDAR payload, but at this time, the university hasn't procured any for us to start using other than research. Now, our Daytona Beach campus does use a LiDAR sensor to do beach erosion off the coast of Florida, and also to detect turtles that are floating around in the ocean just off the coast. But that's a specialized research project. It's not integrated into any classroom.
Awesome. Well, good to
Thanks, Joe. I knew you would know, well, 100% better than me, and quite possibly better than anybody.
So also, I want to make note that in our chat, Sharon has posted talked a little bit about the partnership with Women in Drones. And if they're creating their student profile, she's provided a link in there. Can you share a little bit about that partnership?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I did my best to cover this in the
You did good.
presentation. So this will be
Was-
by way of review. You'll
Yes.
recall in the presentation, I specifically mentioned there are essentially two paths you can take a to pursue a course with, training through Embry-Riddle. One is through the professional education program, and the other is through the academic, or what we call the degree seeking program. So the specific relationship between Embry-Riddle and Women in Drones is regards the professional education half of that equation. And what happened was that Embry-Riddle realized that, well, we want to teach everybody to fly drones. I mean, so that's that's not a big mystery there. But that being said, that there was particular advantage in seeking, a relationship with the women in drones and reach this, potential untapped pool of pilots that's available. So the professional education folks teamed up with Women in Drones and essentially came up with this relationship where Women in Drones would, let folks know about Embry-Riddle, which part of that is having me here today, at least so far as I understand it. I'm not actually directly involved in this stuff, really. I'm just a professor. Nobody tells me nothing. Like Crystal said, the career services were great. That was news to me. I mean, I'm not surprised and I'm glad to hear it, but they keep us closed in pretty tight in our boxes to keep us from roaming around and doing real damage. But in any event, so I'm sorry, I've completely lost the plot there. The partnership with Women in Drones. So the idea was that, could we come up with a deal, which we did, where if people take pro ed courses, we could provide some of that back as support for Women in Drones. And I mean, I think it's brilliant. I've been
I
a
do
big
too.
believer in Women in Drones since the get-go. When I started my YouTube channel all those years ago, our audience was like 98% male and 2% female. And I don't believe that, any group, any team, any business, any industry, any nation, or any civilization can really be successful if we leave half of our potential participants on the sidelines. So I've always been a huge supporter of this organization's mission and just of getting, more women involved in flight generally. So anyway, I personally think it's a great deal. But that's essentially it, is that whenever somebody takes a course as having registered through Women in Drones, through Embry-Riddle Pro Ed, that some of that flows back to Women in Drones in the form of support to help bring the organization along. Did that
Wonderful.
answer the question?
Yes, very much so. Thank you very much. And thank you for the support in the collaboration there.
Oh, yeah.
So we are really out of time at this point. I want to encourage everyone to save the chat. There's been a lot of good conversation going on, and there's been some links provided in there. I know Sharon put that link in there. So a lot of really good comments being asked and questions and connections. So please share, save the chat. And if you're curious how to do that, if you look on the lower part of the chat box, there's 3 dots. And if you click on that, you'll have the opportunity to save the chat in there. Patrick, we do have to wrap it up, and it's been phenomenal. And I just love your journey and you sharing that journey, because that persistence and perseverance has just really paid off. And I think it was very inspiring. There was a lot of comments in the very beginning about how inspiring it was. And I know a lot of people said, hey, sign me up. So this is good. It's been great.
Well,
So
and if I may, just for a moment, I'm obviously on LinkedIn, and you and I were kicking back and forth yesterday in the final hours getting ready for this. And anybody on this call, well, anybody anywhere on earth, click to join up with me on LinkedIn if you have additional questions, which you mistakenly think I might be able to answer. I will do my best. I'll just pass you on to Joe's profile, and we'll call that good. But yeah, reach out. In fact, I just saw on the chat, Crystal said to, connect with her on LinkedIn as well. Please do that. Like I said, I had no idea our you know, follow-up job search people were doing such a great job. I'm not surprised, but again, I live in my little box on the org chart, and there are lots of other boxes also out there helping students. So she may be a better source than I am, honestly. But if you're under the mistaken belief I can help you, don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome. Awesome.
Hey, don't forget, your own Desi is an AVSI trusted operator, level 3 remote pilot instructor. So you have an in-house resource. I'm sure most of you already know that and you already leverage it, but couldn't let this go by without recognizing Desi. She's one of the only few women that are top certificated remote pilots, let alone has her instructor certification with the AVSI. So I'm proud of Desi.
Yay,
Great job.
thank you. Oh
And
my God.
I should point out that Joe was her instructor as she was taking those top courses through ProEd. So yeah, if you sign up for ProEd, the course is either going to be taught by, you know, one of us in the Department of Flight or somebody we have handpicked to fill that role. And I mean that literally.
That's right. And Desi was my favorite student.
And I didn't even pay him to say it. Oh my gosh. Thank you. Oh, yes. So, and it was wonderful. I've absolutely loved working with Embry-Riddle in every way, really, every class I've ever taken. So I appreciate it and thank you very, very much. Looking forward to doing more, actually. So thank you. All right, with that, we are literally at the top of the hour. And so if anybody needs to jump off and go to their next event, they better be quick at this point, right? So I thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for the journey and sharing it with us.
My
All right.
absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Bye, everybody. Have a great, great week. Bye.
Fly safe.
That kind of wraps it up.